All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Doug Oliver. I'm Vice President of Governmental and External Affairs here at PECO. And I just want to take a moment before we get started on this afternoon's panel to welcome everybody to the BPHL Innovation Fest. This is the second year of the festival. We are proud here at PECO to have been inaugural partners with our good friends over at Independence Blue Cross, and their innovation team had such an awesome idea to find a way to establish and showcase Philadelphia and the Philadelphia region as an innovation hub, and the companies, the businesses, the people as innovative thinkers. And so last year was a wild success with countless pieces of content across any number of different industries. Comcast, Aramark, the City of Philadelphia, the Free Library, nonprofit community, and others all came together to show how they're thinking about their respective industries and how people should be thinking about it differently, how we're looking around corners and seeing what's ahead. This second year, though, you'd think we'd learn some things and make it better this year. I guarantee you that this year will be better, but all of the learnings from last year kind of got waylaid. We have been confronted, not just our energy, not just our industry, not just the energy industry, but everyone's industry has been impacted by two broad sweeping challenges. The first being COVID. It has challenged us from a health perspective, and it has challenged our economy in very, very fundamental ways, and caused everyone to rethink everything about the way that they do business. The other, social challenge, a focus on inequities that have long been in place, but only recently getting the attention that it deserves, is requiring us all to put our heads together and come up with new solutions. This year's Innovation Fest is focused on those things. And so while we're excited about the panel we have here, and I'll introduce our panelists momentarily, we're excited to focus not only on what's happening in our industry, but how we're thinking about the challenges that are facing us all. I am so pleased this afternoon to serve as moderator for what you may otherwise recognize as a fireside chat, but because we're at Innovation Fest, we decided to call ours Wireside Chat. Okay, all right. It's gonna be an awesome time. It's gonna be a dynamic conversation, and I know that it's gonna be a dynamic conversation because I'm joined with two dynamic leaders. I'll quickly run through their resumes, but I won't spend too much time there, partially because I don't have enough time to really go through their resume and do either one of them justice. But because I really want to get to the conversation where you can hear for yourself, not just what they do for a living and the positions they've held, but that you might learn a little bit more about who they are and how they think with respect to our industry, as well as the social issues and the health issues that are challenging us today. I'll quickly run through their resumes. First up, in no particular order, but we'll just call it alphabetical, is Calvin Butler Jr. Calvin's a Senior Executive Vice President at Exelon. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Exelon Utilities. In that role, Calvin oversees Exelon's 6 electric distribution and natural gas companies, including PECO, but also including Atlantic City Electric, Baltimore Gas and Electric, ComEd in Chicago, Delmarva Power, and PEPCO down in DC. Together, we form the nation's largest utility company by customer count, serving about 10 million electric and gas customers in New Jersey, Maryland, Illinois, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and DC, respectively. Calvin also serves as vice chairman of each of our boards and is a member of Exelon's executive committee. Prior to serving as CEO of Exelon Utilities, he led as CEO Baltimore Gas and Electric from 2014 until recently. And prior to that, he was BGE's Senior Vice President, Regulatory and External Affairs, and any number of other different positions within the Exelon family of companies. But as a St. Louis boy and as a Chicagoan by way of Baltimore, we welcome him here as our own Philadelphian, Calvin Butler. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, Calvin.
Thank you, Doug. Good to be here.
The second panelist that we have this afternoon is Mike Innocenzo. He is the president and CEO of PECO. As I mentioned, PECO is one of the 6 utilities under the Exelon Utilities umbrella. And in this role, Mike's responsible for leadership of PECO's overall performance associated with service reliability, customer satisfaction, financial management, regulatory and external affairs. Based here in Philadelphia, PECO is Pennsylvania's largest electric and natural gas utility. We employ about 2,600 people and own about 10 billion in assets and generates about approximately 2.8 billion in annual revenue. Again, we are the largest here in southeastern Pennsylvania. We're proud of our record here, and we're proud of the leadership that we have. Prior to becoming CEO, Mike had a rich history right here at PECO. He previously served as Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer. He served as Vice President of Distribution System Operations in Advanced Grid and Meter Technology, and other roles in gas operations, quality services, and performance improvement. Again, I won't try and get into too much of the resume, because really what we're proud of, particularly when we're talking about these two leaders, is their personalities that they bring to the jobs that they have. They aren't the first to hold the position, but they are the ones who hold the position now and really drive the direction of the company, the things that we view to be important. And I'm excited to talk and dig a little bit deeper into those things with the time that we have here. At our core, we are a company of engineers, a company of problem solvers, and there's a lot that we've learned from what is an almost academic methodology and approach to problem solving. There's a lot that we've learned about the interconnected nature of managing a distribution electric grid and a natural gas grid. Caring for any one aspect of the system requires caring for the entire system. And even our regulatory model requires that we provide equal and equitable access to the grid. And doing so has forced us really to confront the intersections of maintaining a system for today, investing in it for tomorrow, while all the while keeping it affordable for all of our customers. It's fitting then that an electric and gas utility that's focused on interconnection is also trying to tackle challenges that face the communities that we serve. Even challenges as daunting as social equity or social inequity. But we think there's a lot that we can learn from our approach to solving our own energy challenges, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. So here's the agenda. I've just introduced the speakers. I will now start what is our Wireside chat. We'll talk with these folks for a little bit, and then we'll open it up if we have time at the end for Q&A. Mike, Calvin, any opening remarks you guys want to make before we jump in?
If I can, Doug, first off, let me just say thank you and how honored I am to be included on this panel. Now, I understand we have an hour together, but if you keep making comments like that joke of Wireside chat, we're going to cut this short. Having said that, you know, as the leader and CEO of Exelon Utilities, it is truly a pleasure to be in this position because of individuals like Mike Innocenzo. As president and CEO of PECO, I often say that you're only as good as the team that surrounds you, and Mike is the epitome of a strong leader. So therefore, my role as CEO of Exelon Utilities is to figure out how to get out the way and help Mike and his team at PECO do what they do so well. Having said that, I take my job as CEO of Exelon Utilities very seriously because, as you outlined, Doug, we serve 10 million people across 6 jurisdictions in some of the most dense urban areas of our country. So when you talk about the interconnectedness of what the utility does and who we are in the communities, at Exelon, we've prided ourselves with being part of the communities in which we serve. And that is in good and bad times. So when a pandemic hits, we lean in, we don't retreat. When social injustice hits, we lean in, we don't retreat. And I hope those in the Philadelphia area have seen how PECO has leaned in. But I'm here to tell you that we've done that across our entire footprint, from our CEO, Chris Crane in Chicago, to our smallest utility. This is something that's so important in who we are, not in terms of just keeping your lights on and your gas flowing, but understanding what's important to you, making sure we listen and do the things that you say we need to do to be a community partner. So again, honored to be a part of this and honored to sit back and have an opportunity to answer your questions and address the issues that are on your mind, because we don't pretend to have all the answers. But what we do state, and no hiding, is that if you have questions, we promise to work with you to get the right solution. So I'll stop there and turn it over to Mike.
Yeah, thanks. I'll just be really quick and just say thanks all of you for joining us. Thank you, Calvin, for joining us and joining us here in Philly, even if it's only virtually today. Many of you are meeting Calvin for the first time. We're really fortunate at Exelon to have a leader like Calvin. I'm really fortunate to have a boss like Calvin. You'll hear through this not only just his incredible depth of knowledge around our industry and what this industry is doing now and what it needs to do, but as I think you've heard in his opening comments, it's really his deep genuineness and caring for not only for our company and our employees, but as you've heard, for our communities. We are in a unique industry where we can't just pick up and sell our products and services elsewhere. We are hooked at the hip with the communities that we serve. And if our communities aren't doing well, then we're not doing well, and vice versa. So, and you'll hear that loud and clear. And I think in Doug's opening comments and certainly in Calvin's comments, we are very proud to be part of the Philadelphia community and have been part of the Philadelphia community for almost 130 years now. And look forward to the next 100 to continue to be part of that. But it will only be if the community that we serve continues to thrive and continues to share in the opportunities. And it's just something that's so critical to us. So thank you all for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Calvin. So with the time that we have, we're going to try and split this into like two broad strokes. The first is to talk a little bit about the safe, reliable delivery of clean and affordable energy source, natural gas and electricity. But also, even as evidenced by your brief remarks, Calvin and Mike, to talk a little bit about how we care for our communities. And I'll put a finer point on it, to talk about workforce development as a mechanism that we're leveraging to care for the communities that we serve. So we'll get to that. But first, let's start at the top. And I'll throw this first question out to you, Calvin. As we think about safe, reliable, clean, and affordable energy source, what's happening at the Exelon Utilities level? You're not looking just at one particular jurisdiction anymore than PECO looks at one particular house. You're looking at the system as a whole. What's happening at that level to ensure that we're prepared for what's needed today, but also making investments for tomorrow?
Yeah, great question, Doug. So let me put this in a perspective for you, is that across Exelon Utilities, we are investing $6.5 billion a year. So Mike can talk to you about what that means to PECO. But think about that, $6.5 billion a year that we're responsible to invest in capital infrastructure to ensure your lights come on and your gas continues to flow. Having said that, we have a responsibility to create a reliable and resilient system with all the safety protocols that are necessary to deliver that. And I'm often saying, I remember the poet Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a good strategy until they get punched in the mouth. And this is really what the pandemic has done to us. When it came to March, we all had to sit back, take a step back, and reevaluate what we were doing and how we were going to do it. But fortunately for us, the foundation was set. And because we have a strong foundation, Mike alluded to the 130 years at PECO. But because that foundation was set, we were able to pivot as a leadership team and think about how we're going to continue to meet the needs of you, our customers. And having said that, that $6.5 billion, all of the utilities are still on course to deliver within 2% of that total capital, despite all the changes, the work at home, working remotely, all of those things that come into play, we're still delivering operational excellence. Then having said that, you put in there all the other challenges that we've faced. The team is delivering that. The next piece of that, I think, which is critical, not only are we preparing for today, we're also thinking and continuing to think about tomorrow. I know you said we'll get to that workforce development, the employees of the future, but what's critical to us is we move to a green economy. We have to constantly think about the innovation pieces that are driving our business, because you as our customers are not only wanting us to continue to have the lights come on, you're wanting to know, are you understanding what I need for tomorrow? And we think about this in terms of meeting our customers' expectations well into the future. So we're investing for the future, the technology play that's coming in there. we're thinking about those things to make us better, because you're no longer comparing us to other utilities. You're comparing us to all the other businesses that are meeting your needs. And therefore, Mike and his team are driving that level of effectiveness. And that's how we continue to move forward. We can talk about some of the innovative things you have right there in the Philadelphia region that PECO is at the forefront, but we have that across our footprint, and that is what I'm most proud of, Doug.
So well, first let me start with the great philosopher Mike Tyson. If it is that we all got punched in the mouth collectively, and we did, then we would be considered to have, in boxing parlance, a good chin, because we are standing, and not just Exelon, not just PECO, but our region is still standing. We're watching our economies open back up, not just addressing the health challenges, but the economic challenges that are co-confronting us at the same time. You mentioned, Calvin, $6 billion across Exelon Utilities. Mike, I'll throw this next question to you. What does PECO's component of that $6 billion look like, and what are the types of, what do customers get for the money that we're spending?
Sure. Well, since we quoted Mike Tyson, let me just throw in another boxing reference to what we're going here before I answer the question. And one of my favorite all-time fighters was obviously Muhammad Ali, and I always, the example for me is I always go back to the fight in Zaire where he fought George Foreman. And for those of you who know that, the time George Foreman was the toughest guy out there, Muhammad Ali was thought to be over the hill. And George Foreman was knocking out everybody with his first or second punches, and nobody was going more than 3 rounds with him. And Muhammad Ali's strategy was he was going to lay on the ropes and let Foreman punch away at him until he tired himself out. And then finally, when Foreman tired himself out, Muhammad Ali came back and knocked him out. And I think that's a little bit about how I feel about the situation that we're in here with the COVID. It's we're certainly taking our hits, we're getting punched in the mouth, and maybe we're up against the ropes. But if we can hold on and just kind of take us through this, I really feel strongly that we will come through both, not only as a company, but more importantly as a city and as a region, as a country. And I think that's really important. In terms of the specific investments, to Calvin's comment, and under Calvin's leadership, he's been very clear about making sure that not only are we making investments in technology and making capital because we have the opportunity to it, but we're doing it with a purpose, and we're doing it with an eye towards the future. And if you think about the electric grid, you're talking about it, and basically you're talking about an engineering marvel that was considered the top engineering marvel of the 20th century, which is great, except we're in the 21st century. So how do you take something that was an engineering marvel 100 years ago and make it relevant and important in delivering those changing dynamics? Some of those things haven't changed, right? So as Calvin mentioned, people still need their lights on, right? They still need the lights to come on, and now more than ever, now the home is not just your place to come home to at the end of the day. It's your workplace. It is your school. It is, in some cases, it may be your only social respite. So, the idea of reliability and resiliency have a whole new meaning. So we're focusing on things, at the same time, we're focused on some of the challenges. Climate change is real. Climate change is on us, and we are seeing more severe impacts of weather, more severe storms. For those of you that have been in the Philadelphia region, we saw 2 extremely severe storms in June with the derecho and then with the remnants of Hurricane Isaias, and we're only halfway through the hurricane season. So a lot of our investments are very focused on reliability and resiliency, but also focused on how are we going to take this grid that was designed 100 years ago and make it relevant for the future changes, which would be, Calvin mentioned cleaner. You're going to see much more application for solar, whether it be rooftop or utility scale solar, distributed generation where people have localized generation, the ability to electrify the system. So now as people talk about electric vehicles, electric processes, for those of you that are familiar with in South Philadelphia at the Philadelphia port, the cranes, all those large by the Walt Whitman Bridge that what used to be large diesel cranes are now clean running electric cranes. All of that requires additional capacity. It requires a much more resilient and responsive grid. It requires an application of technology, and it requires the ability to be able to interact to get better information from how these things are interacting with each other. So investments like storm hardening, investments around cable replacement, but also investments that focus on, as I mentioned, solar. So we've deployed automatic meters over the last 5 to 6 years. So all of our meters are now automatic, and on the base level, it helps us get information about to render usage and to certainly render bills. But we're now using it for better information around outage management. We're using it for better information around optimizing the grid. We're using it for information around maintenance, how to be much more predictive about maintenance. It's one thing to fix something when it's broken, but the better one is to prevent it from happening in the first place, because you've got good maintenance programs and you've got good information from the system. And the last investments that we're really making is really around how we communicate and interact and do business with our customers. When I first started with the company 30 years ago, you would render a bill once a month. You'd get something, in the mail with a check, and when their lights were on, they'd give us a call on the phone. Now customers expect so much more of us. They're, as Calvin mentioned, they're not comparing us to other utilities. They're comparing us to everyone else they do business with, the Amazons of the world, the Googles of the world, where you can pick up your cell phone, you can order something and transact digitally without having to talk to somebody, and you get an update on where those were. So we're spending much more investments into our web applications and our apps to make sure that we're easier to do business with, and we're providing better information to customers.
So Doug, if I can add in there, because what was implicit in Mike's comments is that we are committed to not only survive through these issues, but thrive. And that is so important of when Mike talks about the investment that he's making and the investments across Exelon, it's all with the mindset that not only are we going to make it through this pandemic and through other things, we're going to come out even better. And that's the part that we have an opportunity to partner with all of our jurisdictions to help take them to the next level as well. I interrupted you, Doug. There you go. Did we lose Doug, Mike?
You and I may carry on the conversation here.
You know what would be more efficient? No. So Mike, I think what's critical about that, as we talk about what we're doing across Exelon Utilities, and Doug just was able to join us back. Doug, we were ready to roll. So welcome back.
We're good, Doug.
Yeah, okay. All right. Take care, guys.
So Doug, go ahead. I interrupted you as you were about to say something after Mike's comments.
Well, I was reflecting actually on what Mike said about sort of what we come to expect. And I remember Mike, you telling a story of a farmer who wrote a letter at one point to say he was having a challenge with his electricity, and how we've evolved where people have the lowest tolerance level for being without power. Just over the last couple of days, I've ordered things on Amazon, and I'm told every single step along the way where it is. One of the things that Amazon is able to do is take a boatload of money and invest their own resources into it to deliver that customer experience. We're in a regulated model. How do we deliver on that promise that Calvin mentioned that you were describing, Mike, and still keep bills affordable?
Yeah. It's a broad question. Let me try to cover a couple of ways. One is, in our model, we essentially every investment we make gets recovered through the rates that our customers pay, and our customers work very, very hard to earn their money, and we have an obligation to make sure that we're making the right investments. We also have an obligation to make sure that our bill remains very affordable. So it really is, it's recovered there. We've had, you talk about technology and innovation. A lot of things have enabled us to continue to make investments into the grid and keep the bills affordable. If you look at what's happening to energy prices, the energy industry was deregulated about 20 years ago, and if you see energy, if you look at your electric bill, you've got the cost for the distribution portion of the bill, but you've also got the cost for the energy portion itself, the supply side. The supply side has come down so much that it's enabled us to continue to make investments with a moderate increase on the distribution side, but still keep the overall bill down to where it was about 10 years ago. So, there's another example of how innovation in process, innovation in technology has enabled us to provide better products and services and yet still keep the cost more affordable. And then in terms of how we invest and how we make the decisions about with the dollars that we do have. I gave the example of the AMI where the initial purpose of the automatic meter reading was really just to read the meters, but we find ways to stack benefits on top of that. And I think that's another focus on innovation. Sometimes innovation is around the initial product and service, but the other one is taking these products and services and find multiple uses for it. So the same investments that we've made in our AMI infrastructure, we've used to improve our outage management. We've used to improve our customer communications. When I talked about the storm hardening and the resiliency work, the same investment that we do to take a circuit and make it storm hardened, which is new poles, new wires, new telemetry, new reclosers, that same investment also makes it more adaptable and friendly for solar applications. It also gives it more capacity on the system for electric vehicles and electric transportation. So it's a little bit of trying to, one, always keeping an eye on value for what you're doing. It is using the advances in innovation and technology, but I think it's also finding very creative ways to take those existing investments and one, make sure it's equitable across our system and making sure that you're stacking benefits on top of that.
Hey, Doug, Mike hit on something. We take very seriously our regulatory compact. We've been entrusted to service our franchise areas, and we've been entrusted by the states, and therefore that means we're servicing everyone equitably and non-discriminatorily. So in saying that, going right to the price of what we do, we recognize every time Mike goes in for a rate hearing and the bill goes up $1 to $1.50 or even 10 cents, there's some customers on our system that means a lot more to. And we don't take that lightly. So what we are constantly doing, and I'm so proud of the team, when the pandemic hit, we were one of the first utilities organizations in the country to issue moratoriums on disconnects. We said we're going to stop it because we recognized the pain that was happening for our customers. In addition to that, we've worked with each of our jurisdictions to say, how are we going to come out of this moratorium and what programs can we partner with the state to sit back and help customers pay their bills and so they don't fall even further behind. So those are all key things that we talk about as a leadership team on a regular basis, not because we're sitting back saying people should be paying, but because we recognize that if people fall further and further behind, there's no way of coming out. It's very difficult. And we're saying that we're not going to leave people in the cold, literally. We're going to sit back and partner with all of our jurisdictions and be a gradual process and make sure we do this the right way, because everyone wants a resilient system. Everyone wants a reliable system, but everyone also wants to know, as I was saying earlier, that their utility is empathetic enough to sit back and partner with them and work with them to do things the right way.
Calvin, as you were talking about our service territories, one of the things that folks, if you took a second to think about it, but people don't wake up thinking about it, our service territory includes DC, includes Baltimore, obviously here in Philadelphia, includes Chicago. And I highlight these because they're very urban environments and they all include very concentrated areas of low income, low to moderate income customers, but more, I should say, moderate to low. And I think I read an article once that described them as the super poor. And you're in bad space when you have to come up with that as the next
let's not forget Atlantic City and let's not forget Wilmington. All of these cities are struggling. And to your point, it is we take that responsibility so serious, and doesn't make it easy. But at the same time, if it was easy, they wouldn't need us, right? So we sit back and we sign up and partner to do the right things.
So one of the things I want to shift gears here just a little bit, and I'll start this question with you, Calvin, and Mike, go ahead and start thinking about it, because I'll come back to you to get a finer point on things happening right here in Philadelphia. When we look at our service territory, look at those areas, yes, there's an issue around income, but there are also ethnic centers, very diverse communities. The other gut punch that we got this year was all of the social unrest. And Calvin, I was hoping you might go ahead and comment on from two perspectives. One, just from Exelon Utilities perspective, when we start to think about that aspect of our work, because we are literally connected to all of these homes and these communities. What are our thoughts around that? But then also, as an African-American man, that's a unique perspective that you have as well. It just so happens you run a major corporation. How does all of this balance with you?
It's a great question, Doug. And to be very honest with you, it's difficult. It's not difficult from the standpoint of understanding it. It's difficult from being able to talk to my peers and articulate the pain and suffering that's occurring in the communities, and that we need to be part of the solution. And we just can't sit back and shake our head and say, oh, that's a shame, and then let it go. And my role as an African-American leader to be part of that discussion lead is something that I take very serious. And I'll be honest with everyone in this meeting, that's not easy for me, because I've been in corporate America for a very long time, and I've learned how to deal with it. You learn how to just build up a wall and continue to fight yourself through it. But what I learned about myself as a leader, and to become a better leader, I had to take a step back, pause, and open up to share what the experiences of the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, what they meant and how they impacted me and my family, and share that in real terms. But again, going to the fact of, now that we've talked about it, what are the solutions that we're going to put in place? Because I'm very solution oriented. Give space to talk about it, give space to grieve, but then what are we going to put in action to make sustainable change? And it's no different than how we run our business, but we have to be very intentional about all of our efforts. And you put the communities that we serve, predominantly minority, majority communities, that's huge, because these are the communities that are impacted the most. So whether you're talking about the pandemic and the health disparities, whether you talk about the economic recovery and all of this, the recovery in those communities are going to be slower. And what is Exelon going to do to step in? And I'm proud of us, because from our very top, our CEO, Chris Crane, to Mike Innocenzo, and the CEOs across every utility, they stepped out and led. They said injustice is not a core value of Exelon. We're not going to tolerate it. We're going to treat diversity, equitable, and inclusivity. We're going to manage this, and we're going to tell you where we stand. And if this is uncomfortable for you, or you don't want to work in an environment like this, this isn't the place for you. We didn't leave anything on the table there. But what we did say is what we expect in building this culture. And it was some very difficult conversations. And oftentimes uncomfortable, because I shared my feelings, Mike shared his. I know you shared yours, but that's how you begin moving forward. And I'm proud of us as an organization. And I would be lying to you if I said we were there. This is a journey for us. And we're still having those conversations. But that's how I know we're serious, because it wasn't just a one and done. It's a process. And then what we put in there, I think, around the workforce development programs, around our environmental commitments, because what we know, again, is that it impacts Black and brown communities at a disproportionate rate. And we were not going to just sit on the sidelines while that happened.
Yeah, Calvin, some of the words you used as you were answering the question were solution-oriented, intentional. It reminded me a lot of the way we approach all the problems that we have. And I said earlier on that we're a company of engineers. Now, Mike is an engineer. I consider us, Calvin, to be engineer adjacent. So we can get a little bit of—
I surround myself with good engineers. I'm a lawyer by training, and I know that's it. Yeah.
And so Mike, as an engineer, but also as the leader of PECO, sort of, how have you applied that same methodology to problem solving to the issue of injustice as we've tried to tackle it at PECO?
Yeah, well, let me take my engineering hat off first, because I think before you can get into the engineering thing, I think you really have to start with kind of the personal piece of it. And as tragic and as horrifying as the events were this year, what's been inspiring and encouraging to me is that, certainly I look at, Calvin and Doug, we've been friends for a long time, and I know that your experiences have been very different than mine. So I've had a very different experience as a white male, as a white executive, than you have had, and I've had opportunities, and somebody described it as a benefit of the doubt that you get that I never earned. I never earned it. It's something that just came with me because of the color of my skin. What's encouraging and what I feel is the opportunity for something to be different about this is you hear more voices at the table, and you hear people that look like me in the protests. You hear and you see people that of all races and colors and creeds and genders and part of this. And I think that's you have to start with that, right? Before you can jump into the what are you going to do from an engineering perspective, you have to start with it's just a genuine resolve that this is going to be different. We're not going to let this moment pass and just be, the next event that we think about on the air. And it has to start with that. And that feels different. Now, that being said, words can be words unless you follow them up with actions. We've been very vocal about our support of, of Black Lives Matter, trying to make this different. If they're just words, it will be another instance. So when you think about things like then taking a very analytical approach and an engineering approach, it really is to try to problem solve and find an area that can be our swim lane. And workforce development is one that we think is an opportunity. If you think about the last 6 months we've been through, it has been a health tragedy. It has been a tragedy around racial equity, and it's been an economic tragedy. And underlying all of that, and not that you can solve every problem economically, but certainly giving everybody an equal economic opportunity to share in what's going on there is certainly a big step towards that. So we look at things around workforce development. We took a very analytical approach of it and really divided it up into 3 chunks. And we looked at awareness and education, because I'll tell you what, one of the stories that I have is I sit on the board of the Police Athletic League, and we were talking around job fairs for some of our kids. We serve about 15,000 kids in the city of Philadelphia, and some from one of the most underprivileged neighborhoods and underserved neighborhoods. And we talked about how can we get folks, some of our kids, aware of what jobs are available to them. And there was an officer at the end of the table who serves in one of our toughest areas, and he was really quiet through the whole conversation that we were having. And at the end, I said, Joe, you've been really quiet. He said, what's going on? I said, well, Mike, let me tell you 3 things. He said, 1, you need to understand that a lot of my kids don't even know that your jobs exist. 2, they think that they aren't for them. They think they're targeted for people that look like you. And 3, they really don't, they've been told this before. They've been told that there's this opportunity in education before, and they've grown to be a little bit cynical. So as we, those 3 things really, well, and the officer's a friend of mine, so it was a pretty hard-hitting statement, but I took it very genuinely. And it really helped to shape how we're looking at this. And so as we look at our workforce development, we look at around awareness and education, which is how do we take all of the kids in our city and make them aware that there are multiple jobs and careers that exist for them. I often say in our industry, we tend to be a friends and family type of an industry where your multiple generations worked in our industry. If multiple generations worked in our industry and we haven't been serving some of the underserved neighborhoods, we're always going to look like we do right now, and we need to do better than that. We need to look like the community we serve. So we need to make kids in all of our neighborhoods both aware and prepared for jobs in our industry. The second one is around barriers. In a lot of cases, there's different barriers, whether it be the hiring processes, whether it be some of the preparedness and the training requirements, whether it be other challenges that we have. And the third one is around that last comment around this has to be genuine. If this is just training and job readiness, we won't move the needle. You mentioned here that we're a city we're a great city, but we're also a city that has one of the highest poverty rates in the country at 24%. So you need to build coalitions. You need to have companies like ours. You need to have, but it has to be more than ours. You have to have all of the great companies in our city that are focused on not only preparing people, but really making commitments to hiring people from the communities we serve. So it's really sort of taking that analytical approach to each of those areas, whether it's awareness, whether it's other barriers and readiness, or whether it's coalitions and a real commitment to make this. But again, it starts as Calvin mentioned earlier, from his leadership and Chris's leadership. It needs to be a genuine commitment at the top that we're not going to let this moment pass without making it a real change.
Hey, Doug, Mike is too modest to say this, but Mike, along with another one of our colleagues, in partnering with our CEO at EEI, led this workforce development initiative and really was set the footprint for it to blow out across Exelon. And what everyone has just heard here is what makes Mike a good leader. So I just wanted to point that out. But I also wanted to say, Mike hit on a point where he said, these young kids in these communities don't see themselves in this job, which goes to your question of me, Doug, as an African-American leader. I have to do my day job every day. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, because if the results don't come, there'll be someone else doing my day job each and every day. But for me, in the evening or in the day period, I have to show kids that look like me, Black and brown kids, that they're CEOs of major corporations that do exist. And I take that responsibility very serious, because if they see me, if I'm able to inspire one young man or woman that, I can get there, because what I tell them in no simple terms is that I'm nothing special. You know, I was very fortunate, I worked hard, but yet someone along the way saw something in me that allowed me to get started. So if I can be that inspiration by providing opportunity, giving someone something to think about, think differently than what he or she may be thinking about on a daily basis because of the neighborhood in which they live in, then that's the impact that we are making. And that's what these programs are all about. Let me put some numbers to what Mike was just saying. Exelon has currently 45 different workforce development programs across our 6 utilities. In the last 18 months alone, more than 2,200 people have participated in our workforce development programs. More than 700 have been hired, either within Exelon or through one of our contracting partners. And that goes to show you the interconnectedness of what we're trying to do. It's not just us alone. We have major partners that have invested with us and in us to make this a reality. And we're just getting started. And we're not just talking entry-level jobs. We're talking careers where people can not only take care of themselves, but raise a family. We're talking creating generational opportunity for them. And that is what I'm most proud about. Who's leading our efforts now? My chief of staff, who reports directly to me, is overseeing with the governance of all of our workforce development programs across the 6 utilities. Every OPCO, PECO included, has now created a workforce development stream where they're reporting out, and we're saying we're measuring impact. We're measuring, are we creating opportunity? And this is how we're going to measure our success, because to the point, to say we're going to do it and then not measure it, you all know what happens there. If we're going to be successful, we're going to put key performance indicators behind it and sit back and hold ourselves accountable and constantly look in the mirror and ask, are we doing enough? So I wanted to add that to that conversation.
So how and on workforce development, we all know that the broad strokes of sort of Exelon's philanthropic philosophy is around education, generically around STEM, probably more specifically arts and culture, and energy generically. There was a pivot to workforce development, and I'm wondering if what was the thought process that led to that specifically, that we jumped in it with 2 feet across the entire service territory?
Well, I would say, yeah. So Doug, I would say it started with our CEO, Chris Crane at Exelon. Chris just finished his term as chairman of EEI, the Edison Electric Institute, which is the trade association for all investor-owned utilities across the country. Our CEO was chairman of that board for the last 2 years. As part of his initiatives, he chose workforce development. And why did he choose it? I can't really frame it better than him, but I can tell you what I believe, and what I've heard him say is that shame on us that we're not more reflective of the communities that we serve. And we know we have jobs that are coming on. And why can't we be a catalyst for hiring and training young high school students? Why can't we be a catalyst of getting workforce ready adults prepared to come into our industry? Remove the barriers, as Mike talked about, and deliver results. And he galvanized an industry. And what he said and what we believe is that Exelon, we don't have to tell you all the great things we're doing. We want to lead by example. And that's what we're trying to do. So that was the catalyst. And what was happening is that each of our utilities had something going on, but it wasn't united to make a broader impact. So for example, at PECO, you have the Smart Energy Technical Training Program. BGE has a workforce collaborative. ComEd, Construct, PHI, PEPCO Holdings has the DC Infrastructure Academy. All great programs. My job now as the Exelon Utility CEO is saying, how can we leverage that regionally and really go in deeper and broader than we ever have before? And I'm holding myself and the team accountable to do exactly that. That's the how it came about, and that's what we're building right now.
Mike, did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, I would just, the only thing I would add to that is I'll put it more of a local flavor. I think one of the things that makes, it's this overused cliche, but it really is true, right? So we're a big city that feels like a small town, right? And we can't be a thriving small town if not everybody in our town is doing well. And I just feel that it's one of these things where we can't be proud about the accomplishments our city made, and then at the same point in time reading the paper that we're 24% poverty level. We have to figure out a way to move the needle, and providing meaningful, family supporting, wage earning jobs is one of the best ways I know how to do it. And we do that by, it is a daunting challenge for the city. It's a humbling challenge because we won't get it right all the time, right? We're going to probably fall down and pick ourselves back up. But I think leveraging the community that we have in this city, we have a wide range of nonprofits, faith-based organizations, the city government, a great business community that really is genuine and committed to the city. And I think it's going to be through all of those efforts together and all of us working together that we won't get it right all the time, and we'll certainly run across the challenges, but I think through all of those working together, we'll really make a difference.
I guess 10 minutes ago, I had mentioned the engineer's mindset to problem solving. Mike, you've been at the company for 30 plus years. You got a tremendous amount of experience in problem solving at its core across a number of different areas of the business. Same with you, Calvin. I've been here at the company for just over 4 years, and when I was in acronym hell, trying to figure out what every single set of acronyms meant. The two that stuck out with me early on, I think, really reflect the engineer's mindset. They are RCI and ACE, one being a root cause investigation and the other being an apparent cause evaluation. Both of them designed to figure out what the core issue is and solve for that rather than getting really good at solving for the problems that they cause when you don't get to the root. If I was guessing around the workforce development piece, it's striking past the symptoms, it feels, and getting to the core. And again, Chris Crane, who Calvin mentioned, the CEO of Exelon, Calvin himself is CEO of Exelon Utilities, and Mike, you as CEO of PECO, you all bring this sort of methodology to addressing problems and the rigor that goes to solving engineering issues to this same social issue around workforce. And so I want to stay on the workforce piece a little bit longer, but I also have gotten the side eye from the timekeepers here that we've got some questions from the audience. And so they may take us a few different places rather than specific themes, but I'll toss them out there so you guys can react to some of them. This first one says, what are some of the specific ways Exelon and PECO are increasing commitment to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, both within the company and in the communities that you serve? And how do you engage employees in these discussions?
You want to start that, Calvin?
Sure, go. Why don't you talk PECO, and then I can elevate it for you, Mike. Okay.
Yeah, I would say I'll try to do briefly. It goes both ways. I think there is both the culture, and I think there is a commitment to making real change in results. So, for example, we have stated we want to recruit, and we want to hire, and we want to make sure that our organization looks like the community that we serve. So we absolutely are focused on continuing to make sure that there's opportunities for diverse people in our workforce. Also, that's within our company. I would also say with the money that we spend for our local vendors, we have goals around increasing our diverse spend with local diverse suppliers. Last year, we spent $260 million with local diverse suppliers in just the Pico area, and we will probably beat that. We'll probably be over $300 million this year. And so those are jobs, and those are sort of results and opportunities around diversity and equity inclusion that make sure that we're not just talk, right? We're really making those opportunities real. Every dollar that we spend with a diverse supplier is a job and is an opportunity for somebody in that community. And I would say, and then on top of that, it's really around driving our culture. We have employee resources groups for just about every different element of diverse populations that you could look for. We have diversity dialogues where on a monthly basis we get together to talk about topics, some of them related to the business, some of them far off of the business, but all around creating a culture where people feel respected and included and valued. And I think you have to have both. You can't just be all culture without the hard results. You can't be the hard results without the supportive culture. And I think you need to do both.
So, Doug, thank you, Mike. I wanted Mike to start that one off because it's all about the local impact. You need to feel that local impact. And Mike just brought it home to you, but let me talk about it. And it all starts with leadership. If leadership is not driving a commitment to DEI, it won't get done. What you'll have is lip service. And how I know we're committed at Exelon is because it starts at the highest levels throughout our organization, that this is who we're going to be and how we're going to represent ourselves in all of our communities. It starts with how we hire. We do not hire it for a job if we do not have a diverse panel, a diverse slate. We do not hire for a job if the panel that's doing the interviewing is not a diverse panel. And what we say is we're going to hire the best person for that job, but we're going to have a diverse slate and a diverse panel making that decision. Second piece, Mike alluded to the MWBE, our participation with our minority and women-owned vendors. Exelon, across the board, we spent $2.2 billion last year with minority suppliers. We have a commitment in Exelon Utilities over our LRP program that all of our utilities will achieve 40% of their supply spend with MWBEs. And the third piece, look at our corporate giving. Our corporate philanthropy, over 42 to 45% of all of our dollars given go to organizations that support DEI. That's who we are. And that we follow that commitment with our time and our money. And that's why I hope when you look at us, you see that it's an organization that is committed to making a difference there.
Thanks, Calvin. I'm going to try and do rapid round here with you guys for this last two.
Is that your way of telling us to keep it short? Okay. All right. Got it.
I know CEO.
Why don't you call which one of us you wanted to answer so that way we'll keep it tight, all right?
Got it. These two questions, they're somewhat different. The first is, how has remote work impacted the company's ability to innovate? I think that's a fitting question for Innovation Fest. The other, how are we protecting the grid from security threats? We'll wrap up with those two final questions.
So, Mike, I'll take the first. You want the second?
That sounds great.
All right. So first, on the innovation side, I think we talked about this earlier. We're not only going to survive through this pandemic and this social, we're going to come out thriving. And to do that, we are still investing tens of millions of dollars in our innovation activities. Most recently, I announced, Doug, as you know, a week or so ago, that the whole Exelon innovation team is now reporting up through the Exelon Utilities. We have a vice president of Exelon Utilities Innovation whose team is focused on tomorrow, not just today, but how we're reimagining the grid and how we're delivering services to our customers tomorrow. So innovation is a very big part of what we do and how we do it. Once again, going to answering the question, meeting our customers where they are, but also meeting them where they're going. And that's what we're trying to do. So we're making those investments each and every day. So I'll turn it over to Mike.
And the next one was about cyber, Doug?
Yeah, what steps are we taking to protect the grid from cyber threats?
Yeah, I will tell you, of the things that our Exelon board of directors and PECO board of directors spend one of their most time and attention on and challenge us on, it is about that. It is about grid security and cybersecurity. As we've, the benefit of modernizing the grid is we've become much more efficient and a higher use of technology. We've certainly opened ourselves up because of that. I would say the quick answer is twofold. One is a technology answer, which is we probably invest, Calvin mentioned that over the 5-year LRP, we're $6 billion a year in investment, and over the next 5-year period across all the Exelon utilities, we will invest close to $27 to $28 billion in our infrastructure across all 4 of our entities. Over $1 billion to $2 billion of that is on cybersecurity, both physical and cybersecurity. So we're making significant investments in, protection, firewalls, this and, intrusion detection. We have a whole team that's monitoring it 24/7 against constant attacks about the grid. The other one I would say is if you look across the industry and across the world, it is the biggest vulnerability is not a technical vulnerability. It has been a social vulnerability. And, you hear people use the term phishing. The most of the attacks that have happened against the electrical grid have happened from inside the grid. You'll also hear that in the city of Philadelphia. You've seen some people, cyber attacks. Most of people get inside the grid through social engineering, which you'll get this email, click on this email, and then you get behind the technology and the firewall. So we've also had to spend a significant amount of time of educating and training and drilling, kind of a stance that's very skeptical. Make sure our employees know not to click on things, to be very wary of social engineering.
Thanks, Mike. We are at that time, and I hate that it falls to me to stop the discussion because I felt like we could have kept talking about any aspect, the electric, gas delivery, or the social issues that are confronting us, COVID, how we're responding, the innovation piece, the social equity piece that's so near and dear to us, workforce development specifically. But if you want to learn more about the things that are happening at Exelon, you can please visit our website or reach out to any of the individual utilities. We'll be happy to go into more detail about any of the things that we've begun to talk about today. I'd like to thank everybody who took time to join this BPHL event and to join us here at Exelon at PECO to talk about some of the work that we're doing, and not just what we're doing, but how we're thinking about the work that we do and how we're taking steps to look around corners. So Calvin, thank you specifically for making time out of what is a crazy, crazy schedule to give us some of your thoughts and insights today. Truly appreciated. Mike, thank you for agenda setting. Again, every team's got a great coach, and you set the direction for us and then hold us accountable. I know he holds us accountable. I can vouch for that, for achieving those goals. Thank you both for your leadership. And I'd also like to thank the BPHL team and Blue Cross for their work in setting this up and giving us a platform to tell these stories, and specifically to Steve Hess, who leads our innovation work here at PECO. Thank you for getting us all prepped and preparing and doing all the legwork that leads to events like this today. With that, we'll conclude this Wireside chat, and I'll just ask everybody to continue to be safe.
Thank you, Doug. Take care.